Hi everyone, Mark DeJesus here, and welcome to this broadcast. What I want to talk about today is your mental health and understanding how thoughts impact your mental health. And I know, of course, when we talk about mental health, there's many areas, many categories, many things we can look at, right? But if we look at how your thoughts go on a daily basis, and you can get equipped and get empowered in how you approach your thought life, it can make a magnificent difference in your mental, emotional, and relationship health. And so what I'm going to share with you here has been a few areas that have helped me tremendously in my own journey of healing and overcoming. Of course, this is not meant to replace any professional help you're getting. I'm a brother from another mother, and I love sharing what I've learned in the trenches, what has helped me, what has helped those that I've been able to support and encourage in their own journey. So when you look at your thoughts, you think about the thoughts that you have on a daily basis, right? There are studies and research that say that in one day you can have anywhere between 20, I've seen 60,000, even more, 20 to 60, 70,000 thoughts in a day, in one day. That's a lot of firing going on. There's these different thoughts, perceptions, videos, projections, sentences that are flying through. A lot of self-talk that's going on, where you're taking these thoughts, processing them. All kinds of stuff is going on. And they have a big effect on your mental health and how you relate to the world and how you make decisions and all kinds of things, right? And so what I want to talk about and what I have written up here is how your thoughts influence your mental health in just some basic fundamental ways so that you can walk away and go, all right, here's some things I can work on in my life, in my journey. The first thing I want you to understand is when it comes to your thoughts, is that every thought, your thoughts have emotions connected to them. What does that mean? That means you don't just have a thought and then you go about your life. That would make you a robot. You'd have data come in and then you just, pull a lever, pull a switch. You're not a robot. You're a human being. When you're responding to your thoughts, what you're responding to is the emotion. The emotion that's connected to the thought is what often influences what we do with it. And there's a wide variety of emotions that we experience in our life. Fear, sadness, anxiousness, anger, happiness, joy, glee, excitement. There's many, many, many more we can fit in there. And you were actually designed to experience the spectrum of emotions. And many times we want to say, well, I want to feel these emotions over here, the joy ones, the happiness, the peace, excitement. And many people say, even when it's there, I struggle to live in it, right? But we want that. But then we don't want to ever experience the ones over here. We don't want to be sad. Many people being sad makes them uncomfortable. They don't want anyone else being sad around them, right? Because they're uncomfortable with that emotion. Or I never want to feel anxious. I never want to have any emotions of grief or any sense of doubt. We avoid those things, right? But in our journey, in living more healed and more free in our life, we have to learn to embrace that these emotions can flow through our life. They don't have to be permanent markers. But emotions are like waves. They come through and they roll back. But we have to learn how to be able to process through them, because for many of us, when it comes to working through mental health, we realize we've not been equipped in how to navigate through our emotional world. And so when we bump up against difficult thoughts and difficult emotions, we don't know what to do with them. So the first thing we have to understand, though, is thoughts have emotions connected to them. And emotions create the movement of how we pursue things, where we withdraw, how we relate to people. It's an emotional association. You have like a association connected to that thought that I could bring up in your mind. I could ask you about the first day of school, right? There's an emotion connected to that. What about your wedding day? What about the day when somebody broke up with you, or when you had to leave a job, or when this happened? There's an emotion connected to that thought. Now, how we work through those emotions is going to be very, very important to our overall emotional, mental, and relationship health, right? So thoughts have emotions. Now, our emotion is highly influenced by your interpretation of your thought. and emotions. So when you feel something in your life, whether you acknowledge it or not, emotions are affecting you. And some people say, oh, I don't deal with emotions. I don't deal with emotions. It doesn't matter. It's still there. Now, they're just suppressing them. Now, they might suppress their anger, and then one day it blows up on a bunch of people, and they don't even know why it happened. You might suppress grief, and then it comes out in other areas, right? Where in addictions, or and people will say, all of a sudden I had a panic attack, right? And there was built up stuff that was never worked through that's now exploding. So we can't say we don't deal with emotions. Now, you may try not to, but they impact you. What is really important in the next stage of the journey and how mental and emotional health happens and operates is how we interpret what we're thinking and what we're feeling. This is what really shifts us into how we live, how we react and act, because it's the meaning over what we're thinking. Not only that, it's the meaning over where we are in our journey. So you're not only creating an interpretation to what you're thinking, you're creating an interpretation to where you are in life. Where you've come from, where you are, and where you're headed, right? It's your story. It's the interpretation. It's the meaning. If you want to use a biblical reference, testimony. What's testimony? Testimony is the story of where you come from, what has happened, and where you are and how that's influencing where you're going, right? Many times as Christians, we don't like dealing with the past. We're very uncomfortable with the past, right? We struggle with that. But a lot of our healing journey is learning how have we dealt with emotions, and how can we learn to deal with thoughts and emotions in a healthy way. And oftentimes, we have to look at how we interpret what we're feeling. I work a lot with people that have obsessive compulsive struggles, and this issue of interpretation is major, because what happens is they will feel anxious over a thought that they're having, and they create a meaning to it that leads them on a rabbit trail. For example, they say, I feel anxious, and their interpretation is because you never really got saved, your salvation is fake. And so now they're chasing, how do I really know I'm saved? Because their interpretation has told them that. Now they're chasing that, right? But this can happen in many areas of our mental health journey because, first of all, are you able to identify what you're feeling? Are you able to, this is what I'm feeling? And the interpretation often gives us the meaning. So the sentence I put here says, I feel blank because blank. Because we don't often just feel things. You'll say, I feel sad today. You don't just leave it there. You usually create a meaning. I feel sad today because I didn't get that raise. I feel angry because people don't listen to me, right? It's the interpretation that often needs tender nurture to help us work through the emotions that we're feeling and what we're going through at a certain time in our life. How we deal with interpretation then involves how the next phase, because the next phase is the interpretation is influencing our mood, right? It's influencing our overall mood. What is that? That's your emotional state. It's kind of how you show up in life. And we all know what it's like to be in a grumpy mood, to feel like you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or just approaching life from that lower state, or that just overall feeling overall empty or overall lonely. And so that then has a major influence. Your mood has a major influence on how you act, how you react. And so we flow out of this. This is what creates how we show up in relationships, the decisions we make, whether we step forward or whether we withdraw, right? And for some of you, you're waiting for your mood to be just right to take the step forward anyways, because you've established an interpretation that says, I need to feel this in order to take that step, right? And so I learned that I can begin making major shifts in my life by learning to be kind, compassionate, and gracious to myself when interpreting what I'm feeling. Many people say, well, I feel anxious because I don't read the Bible enough, I'm not a good enough Christian, maybe I'm not even a Christian to begin with. We start spiraling, right? I feel sad. A big one that I encounter, on a regular basis. I feel sad or maybe even potentially depressed. I feel depressed because, and they go into all these self-condemning statements. Because I don't read my Bible enough, because I don't trust God enough, because I have too much sin in my life. And so we know our interpretation is off the rails. When you say, how do I know my interpretation's off? Because it's not leading you to find breakthrough, find growth, find healing, find maturity. Our interpretations keep us bound and stuck. We cycle, we cycle, we cycle. And until we start inviting, and I realized one day, you know, I feel sad and anxious, depressed, and there's a number of different areas here, because I'm going through some things that need healing, and I'm going to allow myself to take the time needed to work through and heal through those areas. Because for many of us, we're like a big accumulation of all this stuff, and you feel it, right? And you feel it, and then it creates hopelessness, it creates despair, right? And so I found so helpful to invite compassionate interpretation to where you're at. Now, here's how you practice that. Take whatever thoughts and emotions you're having right now and think of someone that you love dearly, that you're able to connect to them in love, and you're just able to just love on them and connect to that love. Now, imagine you have that moment and you are fully connected to just passionately loving them. And they express to you the thoughts and emotions you're struggling with today. What would you say to them? Would you start yelling at them? Would you start judging them? Would you immediately start giving them a bunch of things they should do? Well, maybe you should do this. Maybe you should do that. Just start prescribing a bunch of stuff. If you're really living in compassionate grace, you'd listen. You'd take your time. You wouldn't be so quick to judge. You wouldn't be so quick to just throw things at them. You may want to say, I'm sorry. Or you may give them a hug and just embrace them. You may just sit with them. I'm here for you. You may, as you're sitting, find maybe one thing that you say that could be encouraging. Or you might say one sentence of like, I notice you're being really hard on yourself. It's okay, you're going through some stuff right now. You're going through a difficult time. You see, when we're connected to love for others, we can operate, and it's very powerful. Now, we certainly all have to work on how we come across to others, right? But I want to turn that now into a mirror, and I want to encourage you to give that to yourself. Because for some of you, you actually need to just work on this right here. You don't know how to actually identify what it is you're feeling. And that's your journey, to develop an emotional intelligence to go, here's what I'm feeling. Remember Jesus, when he was in the garden, he was very clear on what he was feeling in the Garden of Gethsemane. My soul is sorrowful unto death. Whew. Right? That's some really strong language of the weight that he's feeling. A lot of Christians would be very uncomfortable with that aspect of Jesus. Jesus, don't say those words. Jesus, you're getting too emotional. Jesus, don't claim that. Jesus, why are you talking like that? Jesus, you need to have more faith in Jesus. Wait a second. Right? He had a very dark moment there. But he navigated his way through it to find the joy that's set before him. See, he knew how to operate in an emotional spectrum. He knew sadness. You see moments where he gets very disturbed and was able to operate in even a moment where you see anger, right? But he didn't sin. So, see, we're often afraid of our emotions because we've never been taught how to deal with them, and growing up, all these things that I talk about, my materials that lead us to, we have to make room for, here's what I feel, and I have to learn how to share it with someone who's safe, journal it, process it, so I can then move into interpretation, because my interpretation is because, okay, I'm feeling anxious. I'm noticing that. I notice I feel anxious. Well, what do you feel anxious about? I feel anxious about this, that. You learn to express it. Interpretation happens in a fruitful way when we let the gracious love of God be a part of it. Love is patient. Love is kind. Remember, how you're acting loving towards that person, you're now giving that to yourself. And you might notice, I'm feeling anxious because I haven't had good sleep the past few days. Now, if you're quick to judge yourself, you wouldn't even notice you've had bad sleep, or you didn't notice that your eating's off, or notice that you've been under a lot of pressure, or you haven't taken time off, or there's some thoughts that need some unwinding. But when love enters in, you can see, here's some things I need to work through. And over time, it's not a light switch experience. Over time, you start feeding a more empowered, gracious, loving state of mind to make room for God's grace in your life. And I found recognizing these areas has helped me tremendously to enhance areas of my mental health. Now, as your brother from another mother, if I can encourage you, even in just a few areas, to make some shifts in how you think, boy, it can make a real big difference in your life and your journey. So I pray this blesses you. What's one step that you feel can be very helpful? One thing you've taken from this video that you feel like, you know what? I need to apply that to my thinking. It'll help me tremendously. If so, comment on that, write to me, let me know. And I want to continue to be an encouragement for your life and for your journey. If you want to take a step in the heart healing journey, I've written a book called The Heart Healing Journey. And you can take some next steps to allow God to awaken, to heal, and bring transformation to your heart and let it impact the relationships around you. Look forward to seeing you in the next resource. God bless.